This is the Marvel Masterworks vidcast, True Believers, where we cover all of the adventures in the Marvel Universe. From the wanderings of the Green Goliath, to the chaotic offices of the Daily Bugle, to the grim alleyways of Hell's Kitchen, and to the top of Avengers Tower, with your hosts, Adam and the Emerald Enthusiast.
Welcome to another episode of the Marvel Masterworks vidcast and podcast. As always, I'm your host, Adam. And with me is the Venom enthusiast himself, Donnie. Donnie, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, Marvel fans? It's the man whose ring runs on fanboy energy. It's the Emerald Enthusiast, today the Venom Enthusiast. And actually, it's the Green Man here to talk about the Green Goliath. It is the Emerald Enthusiast, and this is the Marvel Masterworks podcast. We're talking about the Hulk.
Indeed we are. Now, Donnie, that was
a lot of information in like 2 minutes.
It just occurred to me, you're a fan of the Hulk in addition to Venom. How much of your fandom for the Hulk revolves around the fact that he's green?
I will say very little. I will say that.
Okay.
Believe it or not, he was one of the first titles that I read back in the late 70s or early 80s.
Okay.
I started picking up Hulk comics, and I just liked him because he was a powerhouse.
Okay. Yeah, I just had to check that, given your propensity for
for green things, yes.
For green, yeah. I just wanted to make sure. Before we talk about the first handful of issues of the Incredible Hulk,
I have always wanted to see him in a crossover with DC where he's a Red Lantern.
Then he'd be Red Hulk, which they already had.
Well, but he would be Hulk as...
Oh, yeah, Hulk is... Right. I get it.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Since we got Phillip Kennedy Johnson working on a Green Lantern book and a Hulk book, come on, DC and Marvel, make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, if Phillip Kennedy Johnson is listening and he wants to push that boulder up the hill, go for it, and good luck. We support it. But yeah, before we talk about the first handful of issues of the Incredible Hulk by Phillip Kennedy Johnson as the writer, I'm very excited about something in particular, Donnie, that I think we should mention, and that is the return of, in terms of comics, the Ultimate Universe from Marvel. Of course, that return was precipitated by Ultimate Invasion. I don't know if you can see this cover.
Oh, I can't. Oh, beautiful.
That's Miles Morales, of course.
Yeah. That's a foil cover?
It is, sir. It is, sir.
Nice.
And this whole that 4-issue miniseries has spawned the re-emergence of a different Ultimate Universe. It's not exactly the same as it was. And so Marvel has sort of told us some of the titles we're going to be getting.
Okay.
And so I just want to spotlight two that I'm really excited about. So the first one, that if you haven't read Ultimate Invasion, which is the 4-issue miniseries, the first one that you should be aware of is actually the 1st of November, which is, as of this recording, next week, comes Ultimate Universe #1, and that's sort of a primer of what's to come from the new line. And then in January, it kicks off in earnest with the first title, which is Ultimate Spider-Man, which was done by, which is going to be written by Jonathan Hickman, who's had a great run on the Avengers, Fantastic Four, etc., etc. And it's going to be drawn by Marco Cicchetto, an Italian artist who, for the longest time, worked on Daredevil. And the reason I'm calling this story out is because it's going to feature a adult Peter Parker who is married to Mary Jane and has not one but 2 children.
Oh, is this Meet the Parkers?
That was the poster, or the poster cover created for the Ultimate Universe Spider-Man.
Okay, yeah. I'm pretty sure I'm going to pick that title up because I've always wanted to see something like that too.
I'm really intrigued by this because, and again, I'm reading Amazing Spider-Man, and I do a monthly segment with Peter Vera, our good friend, on Italians for Spidey. I have a segment where I cover Amazing Spider-Man with him. But So I have no disparaging remarks about Amazing Spider-Man, but I've been interested to see this kind of take on Peter Parker. And the unique thing about this version of Ultimate Spider-Man is, I have to give a slight spoiler for Ultimate Invasion.
Okay.
There's a scene where just prior to in Ultimate Invasion, just prior to Peter Parker getting bit by the spider, the Maker, who is a corrupt version of Reed Richards in the Ultimate Universe, prevents him from getting bit by the spider. So presumably, he becomes Spider-Man later in life as an adult.
Interesting, yeah.
Which will precipitate a totally different perspective. Like, because he becomes Spider-Man when he is an adult, does that mean that Uncle Ben lives a full life?
Interesting.
Does that mean that, because if the kids are presumably born before he gets bit by the spider, then they don't have the spider powers in their DNA. Ergo, with great power comes great responsibility takes on a whole another meaning.
Right.
When you're the father of two children who don't have powers. So I'm very intrigued by this book. So I'm going to be all in on this Ultimate Spider-Man book. And there's also a Black Panther book coming out, Ultimate Black Panther, by Brian Edward Hill, that kind of has ties to Khonshu and Moon Knight, which has me intrigued.
Okay.
Also, it's written by Brian Edward Hill, and he's a damn fantastic writer. Currently writing the heck out of Blade. So those are two that I'm, at least from the first lineup of titles, that I'm very intrigued by. So I just wanted to call that bit of news out because it's very exciting to me. The Ultimate Universe, specifically Ultimate Spider-Man, was the first, outside of Daredevil Born Again, which I bought after the movie came out. I bought a trade paperback of it. Outside of that book, that was the first Marvel that I had read, was Ultimate Spider-Man, the original. So to have the Ultimate Universe back in a slightly different form intrigues me, which means I'll have to readjust my list again to accommodate some Marvel titles that aren't Daredevil. But I mean, I'm intrigued. So expect coverage on this network for sure of some Ultimate Universe as it happens. But that's what I wanted to bring some attention to, Donnie, just because I'm excited about it, and I want to share that with you and our listeners, and maybe you'll pick up or give Ultimate Spider-Man a shot, and we can tackle the first issue and see how that goes. But I'm excited. But on the Hulk, Donnie, give us a bit of 411 on what's new and exciting with this iteration of the Hulk.
Well, you and I have talked about our fondness for Phillip Kennedy Johnson as a writer. We've had him on other podcasts before, and this is a new horror-tinged Hulk. The Hulk has had plenty of stories in the past that are, pretty brutal and have, horror themes in them, and this is taking him back to that, and really a brutal story in a lot of ways with a lot of really scary images that I really ate up. I thought it was great.
Yeah, and you know what the funny thing is? You know me, that I'm not much of a horror guy.
Mm-hmm.
The horror that I do like is to me the classic Universal monsters. Like, that's my jam. Like this Saw nonsense and some of the other ones that have been released in recent memory. Like, that kind of stuff is not for me. But my kind of horror is the Universal monster stuff. That's my jam.
That's your jam? Okay.
And I remember, if you ever listen to plenty of interviews with Stan Lee, he talks about in the original inception for the Incredible Hulk and Bruce Banner was a kind of fusion of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Frankenstein's monster. Which that description is right up my alley.
Yeah, and you can certainly see that.
And that seems to be what Phillip Kennedy Johnson is taking it back to that kind of aesthetic, that kind of, not aesthetic, but tone, if you will, and aesthetic too for the artist. But so that's why I was really intrigued by this series, because it felt like it was going in that direction, and it seems to be playing itself out that way.
Yeah, and we're given the tagline, "The Age of Monsters has begun." So we're seeing a lot of monstrous characters right off the bat.
Yeah.
So, and there's two big things that are going on here. Number one that you have to know is that the Green Door has been closed. If you've been reading Hulk in recent years, you know about the Green Door.
Right.
They're saying now that the Green Door has been closed, and that there are some monsters who believe to free their siblings, they have to open the Green Door. And they need the Hulk, a.k.a. the Fractured Sun, to do this. Now, the Hulk is on the run and from the FBI, and eventually...
That guy does more running than Tom Cruise, by the way. Like, he's always on the run.
And we also see Hulk paired up with this girl. Was it Charlene or Charlie?
I think she goes by Charlie, short form.
Just like Charlene was her full name, but she went by Charlie. That's what I thought, yeah. And we see that she is in an abusive relationship with her father.
Yeah.
And she is also scarred. I don't think we know yet whether that was from her father or from some other accident. But she eventually sees the Hulk and kind of wants to pair up with him because he is a being of great power. And she thinks just by being close to him, she can kind of feel that control and feel that power.
Yeah. It's funny because you see her, she even mentions it a couple times in the first couple of issues about him being an Avenger. Mm-hmm. And it's she's kind of wanting. I was watching an interview with Phillip Kennedy Johnson, and he's like, in her head, she sees herself as, a Bucky type of persona. Like Bucky was psychic.
I can certainly see that, yeah.
She sees herself as, the Hulk's version of Bucky. Mm-hmm. And so, she's trying to convince Hulk, oh yeah, you're a hero, you're an Avenger, when she first meets Bruce Banner. And he's trying to do everything he can. Like, that's not what the Hulk is. Like, yes, there have been instances where he has been that, but that's not what he's trying to be very dissuasive to her.
Right.
In following, and even the Hulk, the persona, initially he wants something. Like, he's trying to shoo her away, kind of like, get away, like, leave me alone.
Oh yeah, he's annoyed by her at first.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's an interesting dynamic.
But again, there's a lot of horror imagery here, and eventually they are ushered to this place where it's kind of a cult, a church type of place.
Oh, they went to the meeting place of the Snyder cult? That's good. That's good. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I was waiting for a hashtag reference in the script, but there was none. I was disappointed. No, I'm kidding. Continue.
Well, I'd like to ask Phillip Kennedy Johnson sometime. This group reminded me of some of the other groups, like the Church from Jerusalem's Lot and Dagon.
Yeah.
By Stephen King, H.P. Lovecraft. Some of those, like monstrous cults.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, is he a fan of those? Is that where he drew inspiration for this group?
Yeah, you do see those parallels, so it would be interesting to find out.
Yeah.
You can tweet him or X him or whatever the hell it's called nowadays.
I don't. Well, actually, now I think you have to get verified just to send somebody who's verified a message.
To send messages, I think. I think if you're following each other, you can message, but otherwise.
Okay. Regardless, anyway. But
dumb.
Once again, the cash grab. Just let's not go there. Anyway,
ridiculous.
So the other big thing that is going on in the series is that the Hulk is actually trying to get rid of Bruce Banner.
Yeah.
He's trying to take control for good. It's a much more like abusive type of relationship. And we kind of see that paralleled with Charlie with her father, and then Bruce with the Hulk, and the Hulk is trying to make sure that Bruce is gone.
Yeah, I mean, he even tells her, you know, don't bring up Banner. He like reluctantly lets her tag along, but he's like, if you ever bring up Banner or side with Banner, you're done, right?
Right. Yeah, he's like, you know, he's like you because he initially thought she was Banner's friend.
Yeah.
And she tells it, you know, no, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And he's like, but if you help Banner in any way, we're done.
Yeah.
So, what were your thoughts on like the first issue, like this, you know, this kind of cult coming after the Hulk? He's back on the run. That's a very, you know, familiar type of story is, you know, Hulk on the run. Only this time, you know, he has a little girl with him. And what were your opinions of like how this story started to take shape?
What I thought was I really liked the idea of him being on the run, because I liked the Lou Ferrigno Hulk series, and you know, in that Banner was always the wandering nomad, right? The wanderer. You know, he was always going to, you know, town to town. So that had that kind of feeling, right? A little bit. So I kind of dug that. And then like with the cult, it had a creepy vibe, and like you really sense the horror aspect of the book, you know, coming to the forefront. And the way the Hulk was drawn was had a little bit more of a horror tinge to it, as opposed to, you know, the superheroic Hulk that you'd see in an Avengers book. You know what I mean? Like, he's the same character.
Like kind of, you know, darker, dirtier, long hair.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was drawn in right away. And, you know, I've had stops and starts with the Hulk over the years, just because some runs I liked, some runs weren't for me, right? So, but this one grabbed me quite a bit right off the bat.
Okay. So, should we just kind of rate all these together?
Yeah, we'll just go through the first five. Yeah.
Okay.
Like this.
All right. So, we're on to the Incredible Hulk number 2 here. And we see that the Mother of Horrors is trying to come through and become free. And in order to make this happen, she calls upon a servant known as the Eldest. And she wants to reclaim the fractured son, which is the Hulk.
Right. And it's funny how this all stems back to, like, even, you know, the fractured son aspect of it, to Bruce's past. And, you know, I think it was the last run we had that stuff with his father. I think it was the last one, right? Or was it the run before that? Because the last run was Banner trying to control him. Like, literally.
Right, and remember when Bruce tried to lock him away? Yeah.
So I think it might have been the run before that, the stuff with the father. But it harkens back to that. So, you know, I think that was in Immortal, right? Immortal Hulk, it was called by Al Ewing, and that's where the whole fractured son aspect of it came in. And so to see now Phillip Kennedy Johnson pick up on that and run with it for the purposes of his story is pretty cool. Like that callback to continuity. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, I like how Phillip Kennedy Johnson, you know, kind of interweaved some of those past storylines for a setup here.
Yeah.
And also, just based on the fact that Bruce has long hair, it looks like he's been on the run for a while.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of a well-worn backdrop for him, but this still feels fresh.
Yeah. It feels very unique for sure.
And again, that's what we see with Charlie right away, is that half of her face is scarred, like around her eye and cheek.
Right.
And I think that's why initially, you know, Banner feels some sense of sympathy for her.
Yeah.
But then later on, she kicks one of the zombies in the face, and like this display of like power and violence actually impresses the Hulk.
Yeah, I think
he's like, you can come along. Yeah.
There's a smirk on his face, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think that's a you know, we talked about before this when we recorded our Green Lantern podcast. we're talking about how kid characters can either go one of two ways. They either can be really good or really bad. You know, Charlie's a little bit older, but she's still a younger character. And I like because of the hardships she's had to deal with in her life, you know, she is very feisty, very aware, and by force has to be able to defend herself. And that, you know, her experiences obviously play into what she's going through now. So that's pretty cool.
I also want to point out little details like this really mean a lot to me when I'm reading a comic. Like the title page here, that Old Time Religion Part 1. You see the horror font?
Yes.
That they used to write everybody's name out, and also the Hulk in the back. The way that he's been colored kind of, you know, gives it kind of that fractured look.
Yes,
I really like those little details.
Yeah, absolutely.
So those help set the stage for the story, and it kind of pulls me in.
I agree.
So this cult is, I think, run by, what was her name? Sister Sadie.
Yes.
And eventually, I mean, they try to kill Bruce. Obviously, you can't kill Bruce because the Hulk came through, but they did stab him in this issue. And eventually, they get away from this church, but then the ground opens up. Was that at the end of issue 2 or 3?
I believe it was 2, if I'm not mistaken.
But just, I love the horror imagery here, like all the browns and the dark reds and everything.
Yeah,
really
the coloring really sets the tone for the type of, you know, story that Phillip Kennedy Johnson wants to tell, and it really highlights the sort of relationship between writer, artist, and colorist, and how all of them together can really, really set the tone.
Yeah.
For a book or a story. Like, you know, imagine Phillip Kennedy Johnson trying to tell this story, but the Hulk is short hair, bright green, and I mean, it's not going to work the same way, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, you've got to kind of tailor the look and tailor the tone to the type of story that you're telling.
Yeah, like you can't. That would be like, imagine doing Dark Knight Returns with Adam West Batman.
Right, yeah.
It'd be impossible, right? So it's the same thing, kind of idea there, right? So, but yeah, I just like I said, it just feels. And again, we had a darker take on the Hulk in the Immortal Hulk, right? But even this feels a step different, a step darker.
Right. Yeah. And there were like when he was pulled apart and that, like in those like different beakers and stuff. Yeah.
So I just it works so well. You know, like I said, the cohesion between writer, artist, and colorist.
So one of the things we also see is that this group, they kind of wear like human flesh as a costume. It's another kind of disturbing part about it.
And you know, just the locale of it all, doesn't it kind of remind you, maybe it's just me, doesn't it kind of give a vibe of like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of deal?
Yeah. Well, that's what I was talking about with Dagon from the short story. There's a group of like fish people in that wear human skin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that kind of harkened me back to that and some of those types of stories.
But yeah, just like the locale of a book can really kind of set the mood too, right? Which is really cool, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so lots of gore in this. You know, when Hulk starts turning it on against these like zombie creatures or whatever, it's just a big smackdown. That's obviously what you want out of a Hulk title.
Oh yeah, at some point you want to see him smash. Right. I mean, that's the whole point of you know. That's one of the tenets of the Hulk is okay, get to the smashing.
Mm-hmm.
But
and what did you think of Brother Deep?
Creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just looking at imagery. as we talk, and it's pretty gruesome. Like
Mm-hmm.
the faces on the, like, they're literally, like, when I think of zombies, this is the kind of look I imagine for them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like the artist was channeling, just looking at some of these imageries. Like the Thriller music video.
Oh yeah.
Doesn't it give off that vibe?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah, it does. Man, that was really controversial back in the day.
The Thriller video, I know.
Yes. Oh yeah.
But I think my favorite image of issue 2 is probably the last splash page of the Hulk, just going nuts and in a rage and like tearing through, like that transformation sequence. I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the yeah. It's when Banner is but yeah, it's that's a cool splash page to end on.
Mm-hmm.
And again, he just looks so unkempt, like just.
And I like how the Hulk is reflective of Banner. Like Banner, yeah, he looks like he's unkempt, hasn't taken a shower.
Does the Hulk. Yeah.
Right, and so the Hulk is kind of a reflection of that. Obviously, they share a body. That makes sense.
But that's what, it's the little details, right? So if you have Banner with long hair, right, and then you transition to the Hulk and he's got short hair, it's like, what? What? How does that? How does that work? I mean, I know there's like enlarging and shrinkage involved, in the change. Not shrinkage in that sense.
I was just recently telling my youngest kid about the old Incredible Hulk show from the 1980s, the cartoon.
The cartoon.
Yeah, when he would transform back into Banner and he would be in a dress shirt and dress pants, the tie and everything. I'd be like, well, where did his clothes come from?
Yeah, they magically appeared.
They would just appear.
It's crazy. Yeah. But the first, so like, it's just like you're right. No, as I'm skimming through it digitally here as we talk, just again the little details of having the Hulk look like a larger green extension of Bruce Banner makes sense.
Well, we've talked about 2 and 3, and some familiar faces start to show up in 4 and 5.
Yes.
One of which is Man-Thing, and I never get tired of seeing Hulk fight other monsters, and seeing him fight Man-Thing is always a treat.
And it's what's cool about it is it gave me these issues with Man-Thing, and it gave me, I don't know if you recall, but there was a version of Swamp Thing when the New 52 started.
Oh, I remember. Yeah.
By Scott Snyder.
Mm-hmm.
This interaction with Swamp Thing reminded me of that iteration of the title. And even when you look at like, I like how, remember we talked about it with the DC book when we did Green Lantern, how they had the when they introduced the character, they had his name, like Major Force, they had his name in the lettering of the title card lettering.
Yeah, I think you mean Major Disaster.
Major Force. Major something.
Yeah.
Something major anyway. But I'm not good with names. This has been established. So I have to go look this back at Endless. What was it called? Endless Christmas, Endless Winter, whatever it was.
Endless Winter.
Yeah, Endless Christmas sounds good, actually. I wouldn't mind that.
There was a story called Green Christmas. Ron Mars wrote it.
Yeah, on the title issue, on the if you look at the title for issue 4, it has when strikes the Man-Thing, and Man-Thing, the lettering is the title card. What would be the title card for Man-Thing, which I thought was really cool.
I also like the backdrop of like the like foggy bogs.
Yes,
fighting a Man-Thing there again. Just Phillip Kennedy Johnson taking them to places that really, enhance the tone of this type of story.
Yeah, and the artist for issue 4, it's worth noting, is different. It's
Travel
Foreman, and he did the New 52 Animal Man book. Yeah. So, and when I was reading it, I'm like, this art looks familiar, and then it clicked. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh yeah, and that makes sense. Like it and we get a glimpse of, I believe this is Charlie's father.
Yeah,
and he meets his end by seeing an image of, I believe, I don't know if that's his wife or his girlfriend, in the swamp, coming out of the swamp.
Mm-hmm.
The zombified version, and so he drowns or gets killed, and my reaction while seeing that is, you deserve every bit of it.
Yeah, he's not someone that garnered a lot of sympathy.
Right. There is a scene in this book where we see a Hulk plushie.
Yeah.
in what looks to be like I guess it's a motel or a cafeteria of some sort, and it's just funny how there's Hulk merchandise around in the Marvel universe, and I kind of dig that meta aspect of it.
Yeah, well, you've got to think. I mean, they have been around long enough. If a little girl knows Avengers, if she can automatically say, "Hey, he's one of the Avengers," there's got to be merch somewhere.
And Hulk tries to let me rephrase. Banner tries to ditch her, right? He tries to ditch Charlie and get away from her, but he's not successful. And this book got really creepy when Charlie starts in the swamp or the lake or whatever it is, sees her brother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who's dead, and was dead at the hands of I guess the father, or an accident that, or I don't think it's specified exactly how, but that was really creepy. And yeah, the whole sequence, the writing, the art, it really creeped me out. It was like, yeah, this feels like a horror movie, as it should.
How about the transformation back into Banner in the bog there?
Okay, that was. I'm glad you brought it up, because I was going to mention. First, let me say, when Charlie first sees Man-Thing, that is a great reveal of Man-Thing. He looks creepy as all hell. That's the word. That's the word of the podcast, creepy, because he just looks. I mean, this episode is. I feel like Sesame Street. This episode is brought to you by the word creepy. But he looks really creepy.
And the number 5.
Yeah, but exactly. But the transformation from Hulk to Banner in this issue has got to be one of the most visually disgusting and disturbing, and I mean this in a good way.
Yeah.
Transformations between the two that I've ever seen.
And I like the idea that even after all these years, that it's something that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like you just Hulk out and then go back to, like, the body goes through, some trauma.
Yeah, like remember like the old, whenever you'd see it in a cartoon, it would never look disturbing. It would just be like there'd be some light around him and he'd start shrinking.
Right.
And it's like, what? Like, how does that, like?
I remember one for a while, and I don't remember which artist it was, but like in the mid 80s would draw the Hulk. When he would Hulk out, like he would lose like a layer of skin, like there would be like a Banner layer of skin on the ground,
which is also disturbing.
Yeah.
But I think this is the most disturbing. Would you agree with that? The one we saw in.
Yeah, it really, well, like I said, this is built very well, and I like what Phillip Kennedy Johnson is doing here. So
And even when there's moments where he's fighting, like when Man-Thing's alter ego like transforms, sort of, and there's that image of the Hulk ripping him apart, like literally, like that's disturbing,
right? Yeah,
like, and you see blood everywhere.
Yeah,
like, you know, and then there's there's that creature that Charlie's about to get eaten by. That looks like something out of one of the Alien films.
Yeah, with all the teeth.
Yeah, it's like
yeah,
you know, and Hulk just ripping through that, like the violence and it's very visceral, and they're not afraid to show it in this arc. But again, by and large, like with the gruesomeness, like of the before the transformation that we talked about, when Charlie is sort of holding the body of her brother, or what appears to be her brother, like you could see there's just like the Hulk kind of with his head kind of down and looking towards Charlie. In that image, you could see the humanity of the Hulk, and like the sense of sorrow he feels for her.
You can see that hidden conscience there.
Yeah.
Whereas earlier he was like, get lost, and now he sees her emotion and he feels it.
And it's almost like he's like, I'm going to let Banner out so that he can help her.
Right.
That's what it felt like to me. And then, of course, we see Betty in that demon form,
like harpy form. Yeah.
Well, first we see human form Betty, and I'm like, okay, you know, and even Bruce assumes it's an illusion, which I believed as well because of the stuff that people were seeing in the lake. So I'm like, oh, it's an illusion of Betty.
It seemed to be that way.
But then it was actually her, and she starts. That's where she tells him about, you know, that the eldest wants the Hulk, and if
and she tries to persuade him by saying, you know, the Hulk wants you gone in anyway, and you're going to lose this battle because you're not as strong as the Hulk. So we can be together.
Yeah, we can both be normal.
If you just give up the Hulk.
And he's like, and even though, see, that's the thing that I think is interesting, is that even though he wants to get rid of the Hulk, when he's presented with that possibility, no. He's like, well, wait a minute now. Like now he's finding reasons of not to do it, right? Because I thought when she, and I'm glad Phillip Kennedy Johnson did this with the writing, because when she was like telling him all this, I'm like, oh, he's going to go for it. And then my thought process was something at some point along the way, we're going to realize what the nefarious end game is, and then he's going to change his mind and Hulk out and cause chaos.
Right.
But he flat out says, screw it, no thanks, but no thanks.
Well, if there's one thing that is a key component of Bruce Banner throughout the decades, is that he always feels responsible for what the Hulk does.
Yeah.
Even though it's not him doing it, it is the Hulk.
And plus,
but he feels that sense of responsibility.
And in this case, if he lets him go, like the idea is that the eldest is going to separate them so they'd have two distinct lives. So he literally would not be like in the most literal sense I think he's ever had. He would not be responsible because he's not the Hulk anymore. But still, in the back of his brain, but I let her have him. And then I would therefore still be responsible for if he goes on a murderous rampage. It's my fault. So a very interesting dynamic. And then there was the tease of the Spirit of Vengeance, which means Ghost Rider.
Yep, is on the way.
And I like those I like the darker tinged Marvel characters, so I'm all for that.
Yeah, well, you get a generous helping of those here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm loving it. I'm digging it. Well, yeah, Donnie, I'm a fan of this book. This has got to be, like, if they could continue in this trend, this could be one of my favorite Hulk runs, provided it continues in this direction.
Yeah, I like the sound that that when Hulk was ripping it. Was it? Oh
no, it was Man Thing's alter ego.
Man Thing's alter. Yeah, he rips him apart with splurp.
Yeah. Yeah, even the sound effects are disgusting.
Yeah, blood everywhere. Yeah.
Like, I love how like everything down to the most minuscule detail is tailored to this horror take on the Hulk.
Yeah. And I like how his like torso and top half keeps talking like nothing just happened. He hasn't been ripped apart.
Yeah, it's only in comics could you do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm loving it so far. Donnie?
No, I really like what's been built here.
I think it's making up for the neuterification of the Hulk in the MCU.
That's
I think I just made up a word, but we'll go with it. You know what I mean? But,
right, exactly. Yeah. Well, no, a lot of Hulk fans have talked about that, not liking the direction after Age of Ultron. So yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So
yeah.
This is making up for that in spades.
Power on full display, lots of horror themes, lots of horror backdrops, lots of deep psychological themes here. Phillip Kennedy Johnson knows his craft. He's given us a great Hulk story.
He's so good. He's got me, I'm subscribed on Kindle, and every month it pops up in my email saying that I have something to read. And I look and it says Incredible Hulk by Phillip Kennedy Johnson, and it's immediately one of the first reads that I take care of. So yeah.
And we were on the Emerald Echo, available right here on YouTube. We were talking about his story with Green Lantern War Journal.
Yeah, so today's been a double dose of Phillip Kennedy Johnson written stories
with the Revenant Dead, by the way. So some similar antagonists.
Yeah, some very creepy individuals. So if there's nothing else to say, we can go ahead and rate this story. But these first 5 issues. So remember, 5 for story and 5 for art. What would you rate it?
For story, I'm going to give it perfect 5. I loved everything that I read here. With the art, I'm going to give it 4 3/4 stars. No, I'm going to. You hate it. I'm going to give it 4.5 just because there were some images in the very last issue number 5, that weren't my favorite.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, I will say that the story is a 5. I'm loving everything about it. The art is a 4.5, and not anything per se is wrong with the art on either. Whether it's Nick, what was the first artist of the first few issues? The first 3's name, Nick. Of the first 3,
Klein. Nic Klein.
Nick, I love Nic Klein's art, and I like Travel Foreman's, but there is a difference that you could see between the two. Mm-hmm. Like it's noticeable. So that took a little bit of time, right? Because I mentioned, when I was reading it, I'm like, wait a minute, this looks like Animal Man, and there's a reason for that because it's the same artist. At that Travel Foreman. So he was a little jarring. So for that reason, it's 4.5 out of 5. But what a great start! I'm looking forward to more of this particular book. But yeah. That brings our this week's discussion about the Hulk to a close. If you want to talk more about the Incredible Hulk or anything Marvel or DC, you can with us on social media. Donnie, where do they track you down?
You can find me on Twitter or TikTok or YouTube as the Emerald Enthusiast. Let's talk comics. Let's talk collectibles. Let's talk Green Lantern. Let's talk the Incredible Hulk.
Indeed. You can find me at Adam_LeaseFan on Twitter, because I refuse to call it X.
Likewise.
You can join the Facebook group, which the link is in the description below. Click that. I will add you. And we can continue the conversation there if you'd like. But until next time, remember, the Incredible Hulk is forever. From the first horrific transformation to the last. So long, everybody.
So long, everyone.